Well, it's a brand new month here on Property Tribes, and it's at this time that we welcome new sponsors to the Property Tribes community. And powering our tenancy deposit protection discussions, we're being joined by Inventories, and I'm delighted to welcome to this launch interview Sian from Inventories. And Sian, you and I have chewed the cud about the importance of inventories at industry events and whatnot. We're both real advocates of them, so it's a real pleasure to be able to welcome you to Property Tribes and have your immense knowledge on this topic, because I don't think I've met anybody that knows as much about inventories as you do. So before we get going, just give us a little bit of an overview of Inventories and the services that you offer landlords, because you do actually have two options for them, don't you?
Well, first of all, thank you very much indeed for today, for talking with you. And you're right. I think every single time we've ever met, we've always had very long conversations about inventories and property. I've got a little bit of background as a landlord and currently a tenant, so I've got a little bit of understanding of both camps. But I always bow down to your experience, because I know you're very well versed in the industry. But no, it's exciting to be able to share hopefully some really good, helpful tips and be able to be of use to landlords, because I know in some respects they tend to get a little bit forgotten in the whole process. It's kind of like, well, let's get the property rented out, but then what landlords need, what they want, what they need to understand sometimes gets lost a little bit. So hopefully we can plug a few of those gaps.
Absolutely. And the inventory is absolutely vital in our both our opinions. We've always thought that, but we both think it's even more vital in a post-COVID-19 lockdown world where risks for landlords have been massively amplified. And through this interview, we're going to be talking about the different benefits of undertaking an inventory and how it's actually very fair to all of the parties involved. And if landlords need to do an inventory, with Inventories, they have the choice of either using your software and doing it themselves, or they can go onto your platform and get one of your qualified inventory clerks to bid to undertake their inventory. So you actually provide the best of both worlds, whichever option the landlord wants to go for.
And that's the thing, I think that's key, certainly in our industry nowadays. We want option, we want quality of service, we want the ability to find those quality providers. And that's something certainly with inventory-based work streams, which is our marketplace, for want of a better word, that we offer, so that you can access vetted professional clerks without literally thumbing through Google or what used to be Yellow Pages and trying to find someone, hoping that you'll get a good service, hoping that you'll get a good report that will actually protect you. And for a little bit of background, one of the reasons I started my own inventory company, which is kind of preceding my work with Inventory-based and Inventory-based Academy, was because as a landlord I wasn't protected. I had a report that didn't do the job it was meant to do. And certainly when it comes to the tenant checking out, there was a lot of damages that weren't really covered in the checkout report, and it was just not good enough. And I thought, no, we can do better than this. There's got to be a better way. We've got to look at this differently, because I can't be the only person that's experiencing this. And that doesn't necessarily just mean landlords as well. Tenants experience this as well. So it's covering all bases, because I do sometimes think that certainly when we're talking to agents, it's all about them, or maybe all about landlords, all about tenants. It should be about everybody. If we capture the report correctly, if we do our job well, and we have all that evidence that everybody needs, then everybody is covered. And that's got to be a better way forward.
Well, it absolutely is. And having a robust inventory at the start of the tenancy is risk mitigation, in my opinion. It's setting up the tenancy, on a strong footing. And we all know that if you set up tenancies correctly at the beginning, it's far less likely to end, in a bad way, because you set it up correctly. And I don't think that landlords place enough importance on inventories. Let's not beat about the bush. They are handing over probably their greatest asset to somebody that they don't know in most cases. So what better for landlords to put a mark in the sand at the beginning of the tenancy and say, this is how the property was handed over to you. And then, as we know, that can be compared to how the tenant leaves the property at the end of the tenancy. So I think a lot of the partnership between property tribes and inventory base, we're going to be educating landlords on how important inventories are and how to get the best out of inventories, aren't we?
At the end of the day, you will only get out what you put in, and certainly getting a quality report is what everybody really needs to be able to give you as much evidence as possible. So you don't, to be honest with you, don't even want a conversation about deposit deductions. You don't want a conversation about who's at fault or what's missing or what's damaged, etc. Because a lot of the time, an inventory, a good inventory, will actually take all of that conversation out of the equation right at the beginning. So you're kind of like setting your marker, and you quite rightly what you just said in regards to drawing a line in the sand. You're not only saying from a landlord's point of view, this is the property, this is the standard of the property, this is what I'm giving over, but the tenant's also got that expectation of this is what I've got to look after, but equally this is what I'm getting in regards to the money I'm spending on my rental, because this isn't a one-way transaction, this is a two-way transaction between the landlord and the tenant. The landlord, like you quite rightly say, is giving over a very valuable asset, and the tenant is taking on that, but also they're paying for that. They're not getting it for free. There's not something that's going to be handed to them and you just kind of do what you want as you want. It is very much a transactional partnership between the two. So if everybody understands exactly where they stand, then realistically, when you come to the checkout, yes, there's probably going to be some changes because there inevitably is, but most of that would probably come under fair wear and tear. But if it doesn't, then there's a clear indication from the original report, the inventory to the checkout, as to what material change has occurred. And at that point, then you can apportion liability. You can say, well, that was down to maybe the landlord not providing the right maintenance or carrying out maintenance, or equally, that's because the tenant hasn't looked after it in a tenant-like manner, as a lot of the industry looks at it. And in that way, then the landlord can quite rightly say to the tenant, well, you didn't do what we'd asked you to, or you haven't maintained it, or you haven't cleaned it, or, there is some damage, you do need to pay for this. And this is the evidence to showcase this. And if there is no kind of dispute, there's no conversation, therefore things can go rather quickly, and hopefully the tenant can get deposit back, less those deductions. But if it does need to go to dispute, then quite rightly the landlord wants the best evidence to be able to put forward to that adjudicator, so they can adjudicate on the balance of probability, which is where they sit. A court of law will be balanced on evidence and fact. But the adjudicator will definitely do it on the balance of probability, and they'll be able to clearly see exactly what the property was like at the beginning, what it was like at the end, how long the tenancy has been, whether there's been any conversation in between those two periods, those two reports between the landlord, the agent, or any other kind of contractor that might be involved in the tenancy process, and all that forms part of the evidence bundle. So the more we have in regards to evidence means the more that we're going to be able to work on when we come to the end of the tenancy, and then everybody can hopefully see exactly where everything is. They've got the material evidence in regards to photographs, in regards to the report. If it's compiled by an independent third party, then there's less likelihood of bias creep. And that's not to say that landlords are automatically biased. They're not. I'm not. I've been a landlord, and you're a landlord as well. So we know exactly how it works. But equally, sometimes there's an emotional attachment to the property. It could be, I don't know, a family home, or it's been with you for a certain amount of time, and there's memories there. So how a landlord looks at that property will be slightly different to how we as inventory professionals look at that property. Ours is very much a fact-based report. Is about what can we see, can we evidence it, where does it exist, to what extent does it exist, and showcase that within the report. A common conversation I have with agents and landlords and tenants alike is that I'm not really interested in you per se, I'm interested in the property, because it's the property that I want to see. It's a property I want to map, understand, evidence and then showcase that within our reports. And I think if we do that really well, then there's no reason why come the end of the tenancy that, you know, if there's any disputes, it should be relatively clear cut, should be a quick conversation, should be an agreement, and then everything is concluded and hopefully everybody is happy. But as soon as you start introducing variables into that conversation in regards to lack of information or bias, or information is not quite right, or that no one can agree on because it's not quite clear, then you end up in a protracted dispute, and that's not good for anybody.
No, we want our tenancies to end cleanly and amicably with the tenants. We don't want to get involved in deposit disputes. And I think, you know, as we've said, that having a really robust inventory does mitigate the chances of that happening. And I think what I like about inventory, Sian, is that they are fair to all parties involved. And you know, as we said, they're setting a snapshot in time at the start of the tenancy for comparison at the end. And I think the more detail that there can be on the inventory, the better. I mean, I've heard a funny story of one of the deposit schemes had a landlord that submitted an inventory written on a paper napkin. Now, clearly, I don't think that's particularly professional, and there won't be much detail there. And of course, you know, if there has been some damage, you need to be able to evidence what it was like before and then what it's like after. So some, you know, quite significant level of detail needs to come into play. And that's why I personally choose to work with an inventory clerk, notwithstanding that I don't live near most of our rental properties and I don't want to get involved in doing inventories myself. But I think that the clerk has, as you say, is qualified, has the knowledge of how much detail to go into, and is a third party, so is looking at it in completely unbiased and fresh eyes. So for me personally, I'll always go the inventory clerk route myself, and I think it's money well spent.
And I think that's what you've got to look at, is the fact that your landlord will spend so much money on getting the property ready up to spec, making sure that, it, you know, from a health and safety point of view, the smoke, carbon monoxide alarms there, that you're doing your Legionella risk assessment, you're doing your fitness for human habitation assessment, making sure the property is fit for purpose so that someone can live there safely and hopefully long term, because no one wants void periods. They're costly, they're expensive, there's more money spent, to be honest with you, you know, for agents and the whole process. And obviously, if you've got people coming in and out on a regular basis, then, you know, it's not necessarily great for the property, because it varies the kind of lifespan of maybe the units, the items within it, the appliances, and how often it's used. And, you know, to have a long-term tenant makes a huge amount of financial sense. Equally, it makes great sense for the tenant, because there's nothing worse than having to up sticks and move around, unless, of course, that's what you want to do. Some people, that's exactly what they want to do, and that's what they like, the flexibility of renting. And that makes a huge amount of sense for a variety of people. But a lot of people nowadays, I think, especially with how the pandemic has kind of played out, as it were, we've kind of like realised we actually need a home where we feel comfortable, we need space, we need to feel safe and secure. And a lot of tenants maybe have not felt that way, and maybe that's why they've looked to move, or equally they've been able to move and find, you know, spaces where they can, you know, have a home office and they can work from home, or they can maybe have a pet, which is a whole different conversation. So, you know, to have a tenant who wants to be there makes really good sense for the landlord, but everybody needs that protection. They said that's a lot of financial input from the landlord and from the tenant. And the thing for me is it's the tenant's money that is being effectively put up into the spotlight, that's potentially going to be forfeited if that property isn't either looked after, or if maybe the information and the evidence isn't quite there. So for me, the more robust that evidence is at the beginning, it makes life easier for everybody going through the process and to the checkout process. And certainly with inventory base, as someone who's used previous apps before I come to inventory base, so basically I used it, I still use it for my own business, but I also work with inventory base as well. One of the reasons I went there was because of how good the system is in information capture. So I can itemize everything, I can describe everything, I can give it a condition, I can give it a condition rating if I want to. I can import and capture as many pictures as I need, not that the system allows me, but that I need to evidence what I'm seeing. So when I'm training people, when I'm doing my own reports, and my clerks are doing the reports, because I'm still hands-on, so hopefully I still know what I'm doing, I can take all the pictures that I need so that each one has a purpose. It evidences what it is I'm saying. So we're going from subjective evidence over to objective evidence. And because the system doesn't limit me to the amount of pictures that I take, you know, most of our reports average between 400 to 700 pictures. We don't count them for the sake of that. You know, it's not about how many I can take. I mean, I think the most for me has been about 1,061. But I take it because they have a purpose there. They evidence what I'm trying to say, and then the tenant can see that. But the benefits with inventory base is that, and the tenant gets their own column, they get their own ability to comment. It's all date and time captured. They can upload their own photographs. You can see a timeline in regards to tenant says this issue, landlord then says, okay, well, I've dealt with that issue, and there's the picture and there's the evidence. It's all contained within the same report. Whereas, as you know, years gone by, it was all paper-based. Everyone scrawled all over it. And then you had to remember who had it, when they had it, when did they make that comment, and did anybody actually sign it? And that, from an evidence point of view, is absolute nightmare. It really is. So the benefits of inventory based, to be able to capture all that and have the app to do that in real time at the property, sync up to the system, complete it, get a signature at that point if that's required, you know, take the meter readings, take the pictures of the keys, the how to rent information, your pre-described information, your EPCs, etc., is unlimited in that respect. So if all of that evidence is all in one place, all date, time, reference, then the adjudicator themselves are going to find the whole process quite easy in order to then make a hopefully fair and evidenced decision in regards to, you know, maybe who's at fault, who needs to pay what, or whether the tenant gets all of their money back. So the inventory-based system allows the user to have that. The sharing ability, certainly from my point of view, is one of the really good features. I mean, it's got loads of features, it really has. But the fact that we can show a share history, we can say when a report was shared, what time it was shared, who got it, when they opened it, when they made a comment, when they signed, when they didn't sign, it's all there. So again, evidence always comes back down to that, is, to be honest with you, irrefutable, because the fact is that it's all kind of like date time captured. So it's a great system. And that is not just for us, but also for, obviously, for the landlord if they want to do it themselves. But when I've spoken to landlords and I've explained to them exactly what they need to be capturing and why they need to be capturing, because that's key. You know, you can capture whatever you like, but it's unless it's got a purpose, unless it's doing something and you need it, then you can end up not capturing information or not capturing it the right way, and then it's not going to be of benefit to you. So certainly when I have conversations with landlords and explain to them, you know, the methodology, the process, the information, and what is needed, is certainly from the adjudicator point of view, I think, you know, sometimes they realise that actually having a third party makes a huge amount of sense, because we understand this. But that's our job. You know,
indeed.
We're good at land building, we're good at inventories.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a real niche knowledge. And, you know, at Property Tribes, we're huge fans of landlords adopting digital technology. So, you know, Inventory Base is, you know, digital tech platform, and everything is audited, as you said, held in the cloud, etc. This is entirely, you know, in our thinking of the way that the whole industry is progressing. I mean, you touched on pets there very briefly. We can see a direction of travel from the government that pets are going to probably become allowed by default. You know, I've got 3 cats myself. I love pets, but I am, you know, mindful that they can sometimes cause some damage. So I think, again, this highlights why inventories are so important to landlords when setting up the tenancy. And Sian, we've only really just scratched the surface here, so we'll call it a day for now. But Sian and I are going to be presenting some short information burst type of videos to answer and address some of the FAQs that landlords have around inventories. So you'll see those appearing on our YouTube channel and also on Property Tribes. But for now, Sian, all that remains is for me to say thank you very much for coming on board with Property Tribes. It's thanks to our sponsors like Inventory Base that Property Tribes remains a free to use community resource, and we love working with our sponsors to create educational content, and I see you as playing a really important part in that going forwards, thanks to your knowledge and experience of this niche part of the sector. So I'm looking forward to doing more and talking more inventories.
That, I think, is going to be the easy part. But no, I'm really looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to sharing, the journey with Property Tribes, and hopefully enabling landlords to, to make informed decisions, give them all the evidence that they need to be able to support their lettings journey, and hopefully make it a really good experience for everybody right the way through the tenancy chain.
Hear, hear. Well, beneath this video, I will put a link to Inventory Base. You have the two choices, either to use the Inventory Base software yourself and undertake your own inventory, or to go on to the other side of the coin, which is where you can actually get one of Sian's inventory clerks to bid for your inventory job. So we'll leave it there for now, Sian, but I look forward to working with you in the future, and welcome to Property Tribes.
Lovely. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you, Vanessa.
Thank you.